Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Grumman YouTube channel. And we're going to revisit a shop build in our garage mahal, but we're also going to be demonstrating our new microphone for our voiceovers. I hope you find the improvement wonderful. I sure do. Stay tuned.
So we'd like to have you subscribe to our channel. Please hit the like button and notify so you can stay current with our latest content.
As part of getting the garage mahal floor ready for the epoxy, we began things like putting in a wood stove and an air conditioner, and we vented them to the outside. We eventually built a shed on that side of the garage. We put in garage door openers. We started taking cabinets that we had found in the trash, sanding off the walnut stain, get down to the oak, and we began making cabinet doors and drawer fronts for it, and began installing them around the garage. But we knew that eventually, even with all this work and cabinets going up on the walls, that we needed a more unified plan. Here's an end table we made from some parquet flooring to go with the sofa, but we knew we needed to get the floor ready to go in on the epoxy flooring, and it's going to be the same method that we use for the hanger. It's going to be the original color chips. So we began forming up the foundation walls and backfilling with some gravel and getting ready for the shed that's going to go on the side of the garage. Pressure wash some tops which will become tables on the decking either here or at the hanger. And again, getting all ready for the floor so we have a place to put everything while we're trying to do the floor. And even with all of that room in the new shed, we still had to do half and half just like we did in the hangar. So here's us forming up the foundation to pour some concrete, and we're mixing up by hand and pouring it in there out of our mixer. Not a fun job, but again, many of the projects that went into the garage mahal before we ever got to the floor. And it's probably a good thing I didn't have a YouTube channel back in those days, because guess what you'd be getting videos of? All of this. Now, we had a really bad concrete pour and a concrete leveling when we had our garage mahal built. And as all things in my life, as with the hangar and you saw, we tend to do a lot of that during the snow. So before we ever got to this part, we had to rent one of those big industrial grinders, and what we had to do was, it took two of us to operate it, but we had to grind the floor down because it was so uneven. We were having our concrete done by a contractor who used a lot of immigrant labor, and one of my neighbors was thoughtful enough to come by and think it was so funny to put on a blue hat in a white van and go, "INS, I need to see your papers." The entire construction crew disappeared in about 1 minute, and I was left with no way but myself and Luann to level that floor with a 2x4 and a piece of garden hose. So we had to grind it with a big grinder to get it down to that level. And then we came back and we washed it and we sanded it because we had a lot of unevenness, and we were going to epoxy fill it with some Levelite, which is a lightweight mixer, which makes your floor nice and level. Then once all that's done, you scrape it down all flat, do one more quick sanding with the diamond hones, and now you're ready for the epoxy. So here we see all the levelcrete going in, and as we're moving things around, we're getting it down. The wood stove is running to keep the garage warm right now, but when we eventually go to the epoxy floor, we're going to have to switch over to kerosene heat, so there will be no ignition while the volatile vapors are in the garage. And as you can see here, here's the volatile mix going down, and we have a crack in the bottom of the garage door. We have plastic over the outside walls to help kind of mitigate the cold. But we got the garage good and warm, and then we were able to switch over once the vapors were expelled with the fans and all over to real heat and let it begin curing. And just like in the hangar, your primer coat goes down, then your base coat goes down, then your first color coat goes down, then the second color coat goes down on top of that, which is a different mix. Then the chips go in. And then for this garage, to honor my New Orleans heritage, we went with purple, green, and gold. And we'll be having some of that in a minute. But again, as we applied it down, we took our time. We waited for it to dry. We kept our temperatures in the mix. And that's why working in the hangar has been so easier with the radiant floor. So now we get to the fun part of we're starting to put chips into the floor and walking around on spiked shoes and spreading them around and trying not to get any obvious clumps and just having a good time with it. And we're really liking the effect. Of course, there was one spot you'll see later on that I was startled and I ended up dropping a spot right by the door. But anyway, it's not a bad process. You put the chips down and then you come back with the clear coat after it cures, and then you get that nice hard shine. So the garage is looking really good, and it's rapidly becoming a place that I'm going to be able to use to work on airplanes. You might have remember seeing the AA-1B that was in the garage doors. But we've got the floor down now, and now we're going to start to work on the other half. It's not going to be epoxy. we're actually going to do a wood floor because that's the section of the floor that I walk on most, and I wanted to have the pressure relieving to save my knees and my back and all, not walking on concrete all day. Well, first let me apologize for having all the pictures in reverse order. So you're looking at the finished process, the compass rose, the pennies embedded every foot on the edge, the little things I did with some stains that matched all the colors in the corners, and here's the compass rose being laid out. So now it's in reverse order. But the floor was easy to do. I put down some 1x3 lumber, I anchored it to the concrete, and then I stretched furniture grade plywood, staggered over it, got it all down, sanded it, and then I came back and marked it all up for the floor three-dimensional pattern. And then there was a lot of time spent going through all of the little squares and painting them one at a time to get each one for the three-dimensional effect. Now, the downside of this is that if you ever have a party and people are consuming alcoholic beverages, some people will have trouble walking on that section of the floor, just as a little FYI for you. But all in all, not hard to do, just taking a lot of time, a lot of days just sitting out in the garage on the floor, scooting along, and stain in one color till you get it all that done. And then it was the compass rose, and then after all of this comes the project that we're going to work on with the surround of the wood stove. It's going to get moved, and we're going to have to redo the floor. But again, all of this was a lot of work, but again, a lot of fun, and it made the garage much more usable, and the floor is much more comfortable. Now, it really doesn't matter so much now being in the wheelchair, but when you're walking on the floor all day, it's nice stepping on that concrete when you're going between the table saw, the drill press, the lathe, and the other tools. So again, we found it very rewarding. The furniture grade was about $25 a sheet back in the day, but take your time, lay it all out, and I think you'll be very pleased with the results when you're all done with it. Now, before we get into the stove move, we're just going to look at the finished pictures of this, and here are some of the other ones. We laid out the grid on the floor. We used concrete anchors to get everything anchored down to have a good base, and it turned out really well. A good power tool, we were using the Makita drills with the 18 volts, and in this case, in some of the drills, we were using the original 9.6 volts. Not a tool recommendation, but definitely you do want to be doing this by hand because it would tire you out. It was bad enough with the electric drills that were battery operated. I can't imagine if we had cord running around all day long. But anyway, the floor goes down and we get all the pieces in place. And as you can see, as we were doing this, we were also making some of the drawer fronts and starting to install them and the colored glass knobs. Again, just another myriad of projects we were doing on the garage mahal to make it very usable. You'll notice that up above, there's a ceiling that's for a mezzanine, kind of like what we're going to have in the hangar for storing stuff, and except in the hangar, it's going to be for living space and others. So here now, let's get on to the stove move here. Now the stove move is easy. First, we're going to pick up the stove. It's not lit. We're going to move it out of the way, and we're going to take the floor that's underneath it, and we're going to start putting some granite down in some bedding. Now, we went out and we bought some granite and some backplate and some glass to all kind of make it all fit together, go behind the counter of the stove, and give some heat shielding against the wall, and also to protect the cabinets and all. So we ended up putting all that down. So the stove is moved, we get the granite in place, and then we're beginning ready to start with the back wall. And the back wall went in with tile and the glass tile, and we left the paper on it until we all had it in place. And the whole back wall right there is all built on a French cleat. And of course, we were running the kerosene heater to keep the garage warm, because now the wood stove, and it's the middle of January snowstorm, that we don't have any heat in there except for that kerosene heater. But it's a well-insulated garage. But here's what the stove looked like when it was all done. It all kind of flowed together in color, and then we gone ahead and we had a fire in it, and we got it back to normal operation. And by the way, I'd like to say these are Vermont casting stoves. I thoroughly enjoy the Vermont castings. We have 4 of them in the 2 houses. They are a great stove to have, and they're very efficient. So we hope you found all this useful and informative. Thanks for watching, and have a great day flying your Grumman or building your shop. And in addition, there's a little treat about 3 o'clock in the morning when I'm doing web work and other stuff. Here's my cat coming down, playing with a mouse and meowing and just having a good time with me in the wee hours of the night. So I thought I would throw this into you as a little treat. Y'all please enjoy.